Mi nombre es Akiva, soy de Atlanta, Georgia, y Florida un poquito, pero yo vivo en Los Ángeles. Dime, estoy al buki. Es muy necesito, tú entiendes, porque estoy con mi pistola ahora. My name is Akiva Alpert. I live in Los Angeles. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a contemporary artist and fashion designer. I started coming to Mexico City probably around the end of 2020. I loved it. I became obsessed with it. I felt like there was a feeling of community here that I hadn't experienced in some time. And for that reason, I just knew that there'd be a passion for what I do here. So as a result, I had this idea percolating in 2021. I wanted to execute it when the time came. I felt it was necessary to do it here. This is where I'm calling my second home. This is someplace I'm very passionate about. As a result, fuck it, I was ready. Technically, this is my 8th art installation worldwide, but by far my most ambitious. I realized that there were stories that I needed to tell that I couldn't tell with just clothing collections or through traditional mediums I'd already worked through. So for me, to be able to tell the biggest story and the most authentic story in that moment, I needed to do it using an art installation or an exhibition. So that's where I'm at currently with my work. I felt like the transition was very easy because all the concepts that I had in mind for clothing collections, I was able to take that concept and extrapolate and make it something bigger, broader, just more magnetic. And you don't immediately have to think of ways to commoditize the art form. So that was fantastic. So it was a very smooth transition. I can go through any medium. In general, all of my work revolves around love and death. And as a result, I knew I was going to constrain the concept to something revolving around love and death. To insert myself into the concept had a lot to do with how I was feeling at the time. I was feeling like, starting with the fact that I'm on the spectrum and that I've reduced a lot of my relationships to a very logical interaction, I realized that perhaps love could be interpreted as just a chemical reaction, just the hormone oxytocin in the body. And as a result, I pictured myself being drained of all this oxytocin, as if every relationship I'd ever been in was basically just taking something from me that I couldn't give back. And in a sense, I had no more love left to give to anyone. And rather than just put in some random persona, some random character and, have people viewing it, I thought, what if I put myself into this artwork? Literally. So I literally thought of framing myself into this artwork and having all the oxytocin then extracted from my body so as to make a point about my sentiments on love. Resulting from that, the body dies. In its most extreme form, love results in the complete degradation of the physical body and human psyche. So in a way, love kills, or love kills very slowly. So there's a couple of different things happening here. You've got the logical interpretation of love. You've got love slowly killing the body and doing degradation to the human psyche. But the inevitability is, and this gets more into my feelings on spirituality, is the body transcends these needs altogether. It comes full circle. The body transcends the need for love. It transcends the need to even experience love and transcends into something ethereal, becoming some sort of literal ethereal being in another dimension. Hence why when you see the body, you see that it's not anatomically correct because it is something beyond humanity. So it's kind of a flow state of those various variables, to get to this inevitable conclusion. But, in my mind, it was the right thing to do. Better chemicals. Well, first of all, I'm straight edge. And in being straight edge, I've been sober my entire life. No drugs, no alcohol, nothing. So these are chemicals that, we as humans have obviously accustomed ourselves to. So love is also a chemical. It's also a drug. So it's kind of like a play on that, right? Pick your poison. Love, being that it is a drug, is considered a better chemical, I think, if you had the two options, right? But it very much can be so seductive like any other drug, and hence better chemicals to me represented not just that theme in which I'm describing, but also oxytocin itself. It is a chemical. So hence, better chemicals was born. I grew up in the post-hardcore scene, what was colloquially just known as the scene, nowadays more so emo. Growing up in that scene, it taught me everything, really that I knew about life, to tell you the truth. That subculture of post-hardcore, death metal, emo, everything in between, going to shows and experiencing that laid the foundation. That consumption laid the foundation for what I would end up creating. It began with clothing, because I think in many ways I was reminiscing on nostalgia and recreating these moments that I knew I could never possibly experience again. So that was the most direct correlation. But at the same time, when you're attracted to this kind of music, you go into a very emotional place. You go into a very, some people would consider it to be dark. I consider it the shadow self, more authentic for me. Of course, there's people who are iconic, bands who are iconic. When we talk about goth, we talk about perhaps bands like Typo Negative, Him, things of this nature, transitioning out of that. Of course, Under Oath and all the post-hardcore bands that I grew up with influenced like the way that I felt about relationships and that kind of rumination. And that's different from a lot of people, right? They bottle these emotions up. So I will forever be an emo kid. I will forever be part of the scene in a much more evolved way. And because of that, I like to utilize those aesthetics in everything I do, because it's entirely authentic to who I am. Now, with the neo-Gothic, which, I'm heavily inspired by, that's kind of like the architecture that I see. I'm obsessed with wrought iron. I'm obsessed with vampiric motifs. I'm obsessed with Prague and the Czech Republic. And I think a lot of that had to do with cinema as well. Beyond the aesthetics that I use that are so fixated on scene culture and the alternative cultures as a whole, post-hardcore and emo, specifically movies that profoundly impacted me were Blade, XXX, which came out with Vin Diesel in 2002. Some of the best costuming came out of these movies, regardless of the way people perceive their narrative structures. The costuming in these movies inspired me, specifically because one designer was in control of all of it. But Blade, the series, the trilogy rather, XXX, the Fast and Furious series, specifically 1, 2, and 3, all of this costuming played such a pivotal role, and I think the mise-en-scène, and you'll notice that there are a lot of inspirations from the draining of the blood, for example, in the movie Blade. You will notice that there's a lot of correlations here. So cinema, just as well as, the music that I listen to, I think, again, laid the entire foundation for the work that I do today and who I am. I'm incredibly happy. I'm incredibly happy. All the work that was done for this particular exhibition was executed flawlessly. And as a result, I'm just impressed, even as a consumer of this art, not just the artist, as somebody who can go and view this piece and know what aesthetics I'm drawn to. This design language speaks to me. I love it, simply as a viewer, as an observer. For the first time I landed in Mexico City, I did it completely on a whim. It was, a very close friend of mine recommended that I come here and I experience it. And I was surprised that I never had been. Of course, being that I live in LA, I thought that there would be a lot of parallelism. That's true, there was. But there was something so incredibly special about Mexico City, especially where I live in Condesa and La Roma. And I just became obsessed in a way that you don't know why you have this particular connection, perhaps with a person, a place, but you deem it to be something spiritual, you deem it to be something, for lack of better understanding, almost supernatural, Well, that's what I felt when I started coming here, and I love every minute of it. And that's exactly why so many people ask me, why do you want to do this exhibition specifically in Mexico City? Perhaps because I had done work in Los Angeles or Tokyo, places like this. And I said, when you meet people here and you realize the passion they have for art and culture, it is incredibly inspiring. It's not just another party. It's not just another event. It's not just something like that. It's a raw connection to the work. And that's what every artist wants, is for people to be connected in such a way that's authentic, you know, not just come for, you know, the vibe, basically. And that for me was exactly why I knew. And of course, there's the rule of three, which is something, a quote I'd read recently. It was basically, do what you can with what you have where you are. It's exactly what I'm doing. So on principle, it's good enough for me. The projects are only going to get bigger from here. This has been a gradual progression into seeing how far I can take my abilities, and they will only get bigger and better, more nuanced. And overall, I think what we all want as artists is just to evolve in our practice, put out more work, have more experiences, and be able to distill those things down into the most impactful, you know, work we could possibly do. I think I walk with incredibly positive spirits, and for that reason, I want to be perceived truly as somebody who's contributing something beneficial to society in my own little way. Una otra cosa, no, yo soy Marco Antonio Solís. Por mis señoras afuera, es muy importante, tú entiendes. Y estoy listo para mi sugar mommy aquí en Polanco. Entonces, dime, escríbeme. Polanco, Santa Fe, no importa, pero...
Pedregal, bebé, Pedregal.
Sí, listo.